backlash against Texas Senator Ted Cruz continues despite appearing in a goofy photo op to make it look like he actually cares about his own constituents, when in reality he doesn't. He got caught leaving the state during a brutal winter storm when his own constituents were dealing with rolling blackouts. He went on this Cancun vacation, got caught, and hurried back home and was greeted with all the backlash, including a mariachi band that showed up outside of his home over the weekend. By the way, this mariachi band was paid for by a GoFundMe page that was set up by a Texan named Adam Jama. The page also donated money to the Texas Children's Hospital, but this was what Senator Ted Cruz was dealing with over the weekend. Just a lot of fun. I gotta say, I forgot how much I missed going to the Hollywood Bowl for mariachi concerts because they were a lot of fun. But anyway, the GoFundMe page said this: Senator Cruz, being an amazing dad, dropped off his family in Cancun in the middle of a major crisis and came back to Texas to continue serving his constituents. We want to thank Senator Cruz for his leadership and pay for an amazing mariachi band to perform for him. No one should go to Cancun and not listen to mariachi. So, I know how you feel about anyone showing up to anyone else's house or in front of someone's house in order to protest or do any of these types of stunts, Cenk. But we gotta at least give the guy some points for creativity here. And I do feel bad for his daughters because Cruz is clearly hiding behind his daughters, using his daughters as a shield for his own poor decision making. And I don't want them to deal with any kind of harassment or be scared or anything like that. But it is pretty funny. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, look, I hate to be a Debbie Downer, but I just don't think you should go to anybody's house, period. But I guess if you're gonna go, mariachi band is the best way to go. And nobody's in the house. Ted Cruz is doing photo ops on Fox News. And the only one left in the house, of course, is Snowflake. And he could use the attention because apparently they did not give Snowflake a safe space. So he's still in that freezing house. I don't know if Ted has bothered to turn on the heat or if it's on in his particular house. Anyways, but when it comes to his kids, I know there's a story about how they're attending a private school and the private school's worried that they're gonna come back and not quarantine. But it looks like at the end of the day, they're gonna decide to quarantine as they should, as something that applies to all the kids. And although I don't know why they can't do online learning,
virtual learning. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the school doesn't offer virtual learning when they're in session, like they're actually meeting in person. So why would they have virtual classes available? I don't know. But this fancy private school does have rules for students who have traveled at all during this pandemic, and that makes a lot of sense. They tied their own rules to the guidelines that have been put out by the CDC. But apparently, parents were really furious about everything that had transpired. Cruz's family's travel became so hot that administrators of the St. John's School Parents Facebook page closed down comments on Friday on a post that referred to this recent communication from the school regarding advisories, including CDC requirements for international travel. So just to tell you how long they're expecting students to quarantine if they have traveled, they must quarantine for 7 to 10 days upon their return, and they won't be able to learn online while in isolation, probably because they don't offer online classes or online learning during this time. Under CDC guidance, any international traveler who returns to the United States must quarantine or isolate for 7 to 10 days after returning to in-person instruction. And by the way, Cenk, that makes sense. There's nothing controversial about what their guidelines are. They're trying to keep their students safe. For me, what really stood out with this story was just how much transparent disdain parents have for Senator Cruz specifically. Oftentimes when you read quotes like this in a story, they are anonymous individuals, they spoke on condition of anonymity. But no, these parents are like, I'll tell you who I am, first and last name. So I want to give you a few examples. Laura Hollingsworth is one of these parents who says at the end of the day, he's taking this heat for using his children as an excuse for taking a vacation. And that's a mistake. From a parent standpoint, all I'm asking is the school follow the CDC guidelines. And I need to say I have no reason to believe they won't. And they're gonna follow the guidelines, which is great. She continues to say, you've got someone out here saying, quote, I did this to be a good dad. No one's trying to dispute that. The question is, are you fully aware of the consequences of what you did? Does it make you a bad parent? No. Does it make you a bad senator? Maybe. And then Cenk, one more quote from a parent, Victoria Konar, who says this: you start with the fact that there are people ticked off by those who think they're the VIPs at the school, who don't want to be bothered to follow the rules because it infringes on their social life. Then you got people on top of that who don't like Ted Cruz. And then you have everyone irritated because they're freezing to death and can't breathe and can't eat, and he's going off to the Ritz-Carlton in Cancun and lying about it.
Yeah, can't bathe. So what I liked was the same thing that you enjoyed there, which is the universal disdain for Ted Cruz. It's not just progressives or people in politics. If you know Ted Cruz, you dislike him even more. In fact, one of his closest allies these days is Lindsey Graham. Back in 2016, he said, and remember, he's a Republican as well from South Carolina. He said, if you killed Ted Cruz on the floor of the Senate and the trial was in the Senate, nobody would convict you. Well, it turns out actually Republican senators would never convict another Republican, no matter who they killed.
That's right.
So it turns out Lindsey Graham had no idea how prescient he was. He voted to not convict either, but in that case, it was Trump. All right, look, this story is largely symbolic. It is the wealthy that create the problems that run off to the Ritz-Carlton in Cancun and blame others. So that's the main reason why people are focusing on Ted Cruz. The governors of Texas are far more culpable. The people who control the energy decisions in Texas, including the bizarrely Texas Railroad Commission, are far more responsible, and they almost all take money from those same energy companies to the tune of millions of dollars. So if you want to fix the problem and the corruption, don't let private industry and private individuals donate to politicians. It's super obvious. But last point here, in terms of the irony, the school has an understandable policy. You go outside the country, you come back, you got to quarantine for a week, right? But the reality is, we're literally the most dangerous nation on earth when it comes to COVID. We have the most cases and the most deaths. So if anyone's going to quarantine, it should be the Mexicans quarantining the Americans when we come in, especially if you're Republicans. Those are the most dangerous, most potentially diseased people on planet Earth, because they think that coronavirus, a lot of them don't think it's real, including Ted Cruz, who has minimized coronavirus all throughout, who often don't wear masks. I notice he wears a mask in Mexico because he'd like to be admitted into their country, but here he discourages people from wearing masks and doing any of the right scientific things. So if I was Mexico, I'd be super careful with letting a snake like Ted Cruz into their country. God knows what kind of diseases he could spread there. Oh, unfortunately, it looks like we're not sending our best to Mexico.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.